All right, so today we're going to dive into something that's been, I think, on a lot of people's minds lately, and that is UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. And most people probably know them better as UFOs. But we're going way beyond, grainy photos and conspiracy theories today, and looking at a congressional hearing that featured testimony from someone who, really knows this subject.
Right.
Luis Elizondo, a former military intelligence officer.
Yeah, you know what makes this testimony so interesting is that Elizondo was really deeply involved in investigating UAPs within the Pentagon. I mean, this wasn't just some low-level analyst. This is a guy with high-level security clearance. He was privy to information that most of us can only imagine. And, he's risking a lot by speaking out publicly like this. And I think that really tells you something about how seriously he takes this whole issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't mince words either. He really flat out confirms that the U.S. government has documented, advanced technology operating within our airspace. And what's maybe even more chilling is that these objects are often spotted near sensitive military installations.
Yeah.
Even potentially interfering with our nuclear capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And that's why this goes so far beyond just, scientific curiosity. We're talking about a potential national security threat, a threat of unknown proportions. If there really are objects out there that exhibit technology that's beyond anything we have, I mean, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Who is behind this? What are their intentions? These are questions that really demand answers.
Now, you might be thinking, well, okay, is he jumping to conclusions here? Is this all just speculation? But what I find so interesting about Elizondo's approach is how careful he is with his language. He avoids speculating about aliens or extraterrestrial origins.
Yeah.
Instead, he sticks to the demonstrable facts, the hard evidence that's been gathered over decades, radar data, pilot sightings, documented incidents of potential interference with our nuclear systems. I mean, he lays it all out.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think that forces everyone to confront the reality of the situation. Regardless of their preconceived notions about UFOs. This isn't about blurry photos or anecdotal stories. There is a real body of evidence here, collected by credible sources, and it all points to something truly unexplained happening in our skies. And I think that in and of itself is a game changer.
Exactly. And to really drive home the point about how advanced this technology really is, Elizondo uses this very specific comparison. He talks about the speed of some of these UAPs, clocked at over 10,000 miles per hour. And he compares that to the SR-71 Blackbird, one of the fastest planes we've ever built. The Blackbird tops out at around 3,200 miles per hour, which is already incredibly fast. But we're talking about something that's potentially 3 times faster than that.
And what's really intriguing is that this isn't even a new phenomenon. Elizondo points out that these sightings actually go back as far as the 1950s. So if we're talking about technology that was already this advanced 70 years ago, I mean, what kind of advancements might they have made since then? And if it's not something we've developed, not something any known adversary has developed, then where did it come from?
Yeah, it's a question that leads us into some pretty mind-bending territory.
Yeah.
And Elizondo doesn't shy away from that. He uses this phrase, temporal perspective, to suggest that maybe the origin of this technology isn't so easily explained by, our current understanding of physics or our linear perception of time.
And that's where things get really, really interesting. We're forced to confront the possibility that maybe we're dealing with something that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about the universe, about the nature of reality itself. It's exhilarating. And it's a little unsettling, isn't it, to think that we might be on the verge of a paradigm shift in our understanding of the cosmos.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder what else is out there, what else we might be missing. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at the evidence that Elizondo presents. He specifically mentions radar data and pilot sightings. So what makes these types of evidence particularly credible in this context?
Well, when it comes to UAPs, radar data and pilot sightings are really considered, some of the most compelling evidence. And there's a couple reasons for that. First, radar systems are designed to detect objects in the sky, regardless of whether those objects are identified or not. So when a radar operator picks up something that's moving at, hypersonic speeds, making these erratic maneuvers that just defy our understanding of aerodynamics, well, that's really hard to dismiss as just, a glitch in the system.
Right. And then you have these pilot sightings, often from highly trained military personnel.
Yeah.
And people who really know what they're looking at. These aren't, just your average folks mistaking a weather balloon for something extraordinary. These are pilots with, years of experience flying sophisticated aircraft. And they're reporting, visual contact with objects exhibiting capabilities that we just can't replicate.
Exactly. And what makes these sightings even more credible is that they're often corroborated by multiple witnesses, sometimes even from different aircraft or, ground-based observers. So you might have multiple people with different perspectives, all reporting the same unusual phenomenon. And that adds, significant layer of credibility to the accounts.
And it's not just the visual sightings,
Right.
right? Elizondo mentions potential interactions with our nuclear systems. And that's a whole other level's unsettling.
Absolutely. It raises some very serious questions about, the potential threat these UAPs might pose. I mean, if they're capable of interfering with our nuclear capabilities, well, then that's not just a scientific curiosity anymore. That's a major national security concern.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what Elizondo and others in the intelligence community have seen behind closed doors, what kind of evidence they might have that hasn't been made public yet. But even with the information that has been released, it's clear that we're dealing with something truly extraordinary.
Right. And while there are always going to be skeptics out there, people who just dismiss this as, a bunch of overblown stories or misinterpretations, I think Elizondo's testimony presents a really compelling case, a case that warrants serious investigation. He's not asking us to believe in anything blindly. He's presenting the facts, the evidence, and he's challenging us to confront the reality of the unknown.
And that's where this idea of temporal perspective comes back into play.
Right.
He seems to be suggesting that maybe our current scientific models, our understanding of physics, the nature of time, maybe they might not be sufficient to explain what we're seeing. It's like he's hinting that we might need to expand our understanding of reality itself to fully grasp the implications of these phenomena.
And that's what makes this so fascinating. It's not just about identifying what these UAPs are, but it's about what they might teach us about ourselves, about the limits of our knowledge, about the vastness of the universe and the possibilities that lie beyond our current comprehension.
It's almost like we're back in the days when people thought the Earth was flat. And then someone came along and said, no, it's round. And it completely changed our understanding of our place in the world.
That's a great analogy. What if we're on the cusp of a similar kind of paradigm shift, a moment where our understanding of the universe, takes a giant leap forward? It's exciting, it's daunting, and it's definitely something that deserves our attention.
Elizondo's testimony has sparked a lot of debate, and not everyone agrees with his conclusions. Some critics argue that there are more down-to-earth explanations for these sightings, that we shouldn't jump to these extraordinary conclusions without exhausting all other possibilities. So what are some of the counter-arguments or alternative explanations that have been put forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's true that skepticism is healthy, especially when you're dealing with something like this, something that's so potentially paradigm-shifting as UAPs. And there have been, a number of alternative explanations that have been proposed, ranging from, misidentified aircraft or weather phenomena to advanced drone technology, or even secret government projects.
Right. So what are some of the more common ones that you've heard?
Well, for example, some skeptics argue that, many UAP sightings can actually be attributed to things like experimental aircraft, atmospheric anomalies, or even, sophisticated drones that haven't been publicly disclosed. They suggest that these sightings are often just misinterpretations or exaggerations of known phenomena.
Okay, but Elizondo and these other experts, they would know about these things, right?
Exactly. And that's what makes this so compelling. We're not talking about, amateur UFO enthusiasts jumping to conclusions. These are seasoned intelligence professionals, scientists, pilots, people who are trained to be skeptical, to look for the most logical explanation. And yet they're coming forward and saying, we've exhausted all the conventional explanations and we're still left with something we can't explain.
So it's almost like they're inviting the rest of the scientific community to step up and take a closer look, bring their expertise and their resources to try to solve this mystery.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Whether or not you believe in the possibility of extraterrestrial origins, the fact remains that there are these documented phenomena happening in our airspace that we don't fully understand. And that's something that should concern everyone, regardless of their beliefs. It's a matter of scientific inquiry, national security, and potentially even, our understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos.
So let's kind of recap here. Based on what we've learned from Elizondo's testimony and our discussion today, UAPs are a real phenomenon, and they often exhibit capabilities beyond anything we currently understand. The evidence, while not conclusive, suggests that there's a potential national security risk and an origin that remains a total mystery.
And it really leaves us with a lot to think about. If these technologies are not of human origin, then where do they come from? What are the implications for humanity? Does this change our understanding of our place in the universe? These are all questions that we may not have answers to right now, but they're questions that we as a species need to start asking, questions that deserve our attention and our curiosity.
It's definitely a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the universe, but the possibilities that exist beyond our current comprehension. And that in and of itself is humbling and incredibly exciting. So keep looking up, keep asking questions. Who knows what we might discover?